You are sitting there, staring at a terribly quiet phone, feeling the heavy, hollow ache of his sudden silence. The conventional world will politely advise you to communicate your feelings, to send that lengthy text, or to seek closure. But let me be brutally honest with you. Stepping back and completely ignoring him is the absolute only way you will ever truly be heard. You have been led to believe that his sudden coldness, his unexplained absences, and his frustrating mixed signals mean he is pulling away or losing interest. That is a magnificent lie. His emotional withdrawal is not a reflection of your worth. It is the spectacular, terrifying collapse of his nervous system because he is secretly obsessed with you. In this video, we are going completely off script. I am going to expose the true signs of a shattered male ego, and I will show you precisely how to weaponize his feigned indifference to permanently command his devotion by the time we reach the end of this video. You walk into the room, and suddenly he turns into a statue of ice. It is a rather peculiar phenomenon, isn't it? Society tells us that if a man fancies you, he will be tripping over his own feet to pull out your chair or fetch your coat. Yet you find yourself dealing with someone who suddenly behaves as if you are nothing more than the wallpaper. Do not let this feigned indifference fool you. It is a meticulously crafted illusion. This stoic facade is not a lack of interest. Rather, it is a glaring symptom of a shattered male ego in the presence of true feminine magnetism. Men are conditioned from boyhood to be in absolute control, to be the architects of their own emotional fortress. When a man feels an undeniable pull towards you, a pull that he cannot rationally manage, his internal alarm system shrieks. His immediate, almost primitive response is to overcompensate. Think of his mind like a tightly wound spring. The closer you get, the more the tension builds. If he were to let his guard down, the spring would snap, and his profound vulnerability would be on full display for everyone to witness. So instead of smiling when you speak, he looks away. Instead of replying to your message with the eagerness he genuinely feels, he leaves you on red for 4 agonizing hours. He is attempting to regain the upper hand by pretending the game doesn't even exist. I know how intensely frustrating this behavior can be. It stings to be met with a blank stare when you know deep down there is a palpable connection. But instead of spiraling into self-doubt or sending a frantic double text asking what you did wrong, I urge you to reframe this entirely. Pour yourself a nice cup of Earl Grey, sit back, and simply observe his little performance. Realize that his silence is, paradoxically, the absolute loudest declaration of your power over him. However, maintaining this icy exterior requires a colossal amount of energy, and the cracks in his armor inevitably begin to show. While he may try his utmost to appear entirely unbothered by your mere existence, there is one specific, volatile emotion that completely bypasses his logic and betrays his carefully constructed indifference. That volatile emotion, my dear, is jealousy. But please, do not expect him to dramatically declare his envy like a character in a Shakespearean tragedy. That would require far too much vulnerability. Instead, when his fragile ego is bruised by the mere thought of another man capturing your attention, it leaks out in the form of subtle, stinging microaggressions. He wraps his bleeding pride in the convenient guise of just having a laugh or cheeky banter, hoping you will not notice the sheer panic beneath. You will spot this precise behavior when a male colleague simply praises your work, or when a rather charming barista gives you an overly friendly smile. Suddenly, your ostensibly stoic gentleman
transforms into a fountain of sarcastic remarks. He might drop a cutting comment about the other chap's choice of attire or make a seemingly harmless joke about your new best mate. You must recognize this performance for what it is: his internal territory dispute, cleverly masked as dry wit. I understand how exhausting it is to decode these cryptic passive-aggressive jabs, and the temptation to immediately defend yourself is incredibly strong. However, when he makes a snide remark about your weekend plans, do not waste your breath launching into an elaborate justification. Instead of handing him that reassurance on a silver platter, simply offer a serene, knowing smile. Take a delicate sip of your wine and let his comment hang awkwardly in the air. Let him sit in the uncomfortable silence of his own transparent insecurity. By reacting emotionally, you merely feed the very ego he is desperately attempting to protect, validating his underlying fear that he is losing control of the dynamic. When you remain perfectly unbothered, you starve his anxiety of the drama it so desperately craves. He is essentially prodding you, testing the waters to see if he can still elicit a reaction, which is nothing more than a childish attempt to soothe his own rattled nerves. Yet this elaborate charade of sarcastic deflection and feigned indifference can only carry him so far. While he expends a tremendous amount of energy pretending that you are merely an afterthought in his busy life, his own cognitive processes are simultaneously betraying him. For a man who supposedly cares so little about your existence, he possesses an utterly astonishing, almost terrifying collection of data regarding your every move.
You see, whilst he puts on an absolute masterclass in emotional detachment, his brain is covertly operating like a highly sophisticated surveillance system. He might take an entire afternoon to reply to a simple text, yet he astonishingly remembers that your favorite obscure childhood film is Labyrinth, or that you prefer your oat latte with precisely half a pump of vanilla. This is what I call the secret archive. He is so desperately obsessed that his subconscious involuntarily registers, files, and preserves every minute detail you casually let slip, completely overriding his conscious effort to appear indifferent. This phenomenon occurs because his primal focus is entirely locked onto you, much like a hunter quietly tracking a rather magnificent prize. When a man's nervous system is genuinely captivated, it simply cannot afford to miss a single clue about who you are, what you desire, and what makes you tick. He may pretend to be engrossed in his phone whilst you speak about a seemingly irrelevant dispute at the office, but make no mistake, his mental tape recorder is spinning. It is a spectacular contradiction between his bruised ego, which demands he acts aloof, and his biological drive, which insists he learns everything about the sovereign woman before him. It is thoroughly maddening, is it not? You might feel completely ignored on a Tuesday, only for him to casually bring up your sister's rather complicated dietary requirements 3 weeks later. When this happens, please resist the urge to melt into a puddle of gratitude. Instead of gushing over how sweet it is that he remembered, thereby rewarding his confusing hot and cold behavior, simply acknowledge it with a brief, composed nod. If he unexpectedly recalls the name of your first pet, just offer a polite, mysterious smile, say, "good memory," and seamlessly change the subject. By refusing to over-validate his secret archive, you maintain your magnetic polarity and keep his ego firmly in check. The moment you act overly flattered, his pride inflates. He assumes he has successfully conquered your affections, and that thrilling tension immediately evaporates. Keep your inner world vast, complex, and slightly inaccessible. Let him hoard his little collection of facts about you, but never allow him to believe he has completely solved the puzzle. A man who thinks he has completely figured you out is a man who becomes profoundly bored.
He will of course try his absolute hardest to keep this repository of knowledge securely locked away, only letting facts slip when his guard drops for a fraction of a second. Yet no matter how fiercely he polices his words or how strategically he deploys his silence, he simply cannot police the physiological responses coursing through his veins. There is one specific realm where his meticulously crafted alpha male facade crumbles entirely, and all you need to do is sit back and watch how his own anatomy inevitably betrays his darkest secret.
You can meticulously curate every single word that leaves your mouth, but you absolutely cannot negotiate with the autonomic nervous system. This is precisely where his entire charade spectacularly falls to pieces. He may have successfully convinced his mates, and perhaps even his own fragile pride, that he is an unbothered, stoic alpha male, but his physiology simply refuses to lie. When a man is secretly consumed by a sovereign woman, his body perceives her magnetic presence not merely as a profound attraction, but as a genuine psychological threat to his carefully guarded ego. Pay very close attention to the micro movements, for they speak volumes louder than his strategic silences. His jaw might slightly clench the moment you enter the room. His vocal pitch may subtly drop or waver when he is forced to address you, or you might notice a sudden, inexplicable restlessness in his hands. It is entirely akin to a swan gliding across the Thames. He attempts to look utterly graceful, detached and composed on the surface, whilst frantically paddling beneath the water just to maintain the grand illusion. I know it is deeply ingrained in many women to want to put people at ease, especially when we intuitively sense their discomfort. However, when you notice him nervously adjusting his watch or failing to hold your eye contact for more than a fleeting second, you must resist the urge to soften your energy. Do not shrink yourself, lower your gaze, or offer a soothing compliment just to make his masculinity feel secure. Let him sweat in the palpable tension. Simply adjust your posture, perhaps sip your drink, and allow his nervous system to completely unravel before you. These involuntary biological betrayals are the ultimate, undeniable proof of your influence over his mind. His bleeding ego is desperately commanding his brain to remain distant and unaffected, yet his pupils inevitably dilate, his breathing shifts, and his physical orientation naturally gravitates towards you, regardless of who else is in the room. He is effectively engaged in a brutal, exhausting tug-of-war between his desperate need for emotional control and his primal, undeniable obsession with your feminine polarity. Recognizing these shattered pieces of the male ego is profoundly liberating, as it entirely removes your own anxiety from the equation. You no longer need to decode his delayed text messages or overthink his sudden bouts of coldness, because you now understand the terrified psychology actively driving them. Yet knowing his mind is in absolute tatters is merely the first piece of the puzzle. The true mastery lies in what you do with this revelation and how we use it to permanently solidify your position. So, my dear, the next time a man suddenly turns as cold as a bleak London winter, do not panic, and certainly do not chase. Recognize it for the magnificent compliment that it truly is, a shattered ego desperately attempting to survive your sovereignty. Now, I leave you with a rather provocative question to ponder, and I expect your utmost honesty down in the comments. Which of these desperate, bruised ego signs have you caught a man displaying, yet completely misunderstood as rejection at the time? Confess your stories below. I shall be reading them. And if you are quite finished settling for crumbs, and you wish to permanently master the unspoken psychology of relationships, I highly suggest you subscribe to Destiny's Decree and turn on the notification bell.
Do not leave your romantic life to chance when you can be the one entirely in command. Until next time, stay sovereign.